fantastical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, that is right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Patron Feedback Show for week number 19, the Benedict Cumberbatch and Arcade Fire episode of Saturday Night Live. It has been a really fun week on the podcast, starting with the Hot Take Show from Andrew Haynes, Bill Kenny, and Kaylee Morrison. And then, of course, I was back for the roundtable this week where we had an amazing conversation with Amanda Mitchell, Darren Patterson, and Rebecca North. And both those conversations are in your feeds right now to hear everything that we thought about for the episode. But now, as we close out the week, every single week we've done this throughout the season with our amazing patrons, it is the Patron Feedback Show. And this is the show where we answer your SNL questions and talk about what is trending in SNL social media. And we have some amazing patrons joining us this week again. First up, I will introduce one of the hosts of the SNL Vibes podcast, or Saturday Night Vibes. It is Emily Macomber. Emily, how are you?
Good. I'm so glad to be here, John. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so great to have you back. We had you on the show earlier in the season, and I'm excited to get your thoughts. And also joining us is Greg Krog. Actually, Greg will be joining us in just a little bit. Greg is Emily's co-host on the show, and he's going to be joining us partway through the show as well. So we'll get to hear Greg's thoughts as well. But Emily, so great to have you on the show again. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited. I mean, never fun to come to the end of the season, but
for sure.
But yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, what have been your thoughts on season 47? Like I said, we caught you right at the beginning of the season. Yes. I think it was the Kieran Culkin episode where we had you and Greg on. So really just like as we were beginning and ramping up into the fall, that was a really fun run. But what have been your thoughts since the last time we heard from you?
Yeah, I think it's been a really strong season. I think we've seen a lot of great things from the featured players. In particular, Andrew Dismukes has really, I think, just like shot off this season.
For sure.
I would say some of like my biggest like actual like laugh out loud moments have happened this season. In particular, in the episode we're going to talk about tonight. I think it's been really strong. And I've had a lot of fun with it. And the cast seems like they've been having a whole lot of fun with it, which is always part of the reason I watch. You know, it's really good to see.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode from this season so far?
It might be. I mean, I really liked this past week's episode, or I like the Ariana DeBose episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting pick. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody in the entire season say that.
I know it was my favorite. Now I'm trying to I'm blanking on of course what sketch really stood out to me.
Sure. Yeah. But that style of episode where it was more obviously she came from a Broadway background. There was a lot of singing going on. You like that stuff? Yeah,
I did. I thought it was really fun. A little bit different.
For sure. And we did definitely see a little bit of singing this week from Benedict Cumberbatch. And, very interesting to hear that you said this could have been one of your favorites of the season. So it's a great week to have you on the podcast then. Yeah. So what were your thoughts on the Benedict Cumberbatch episode?
I thought he did a great time. A great job his second time hosting. So respected and so talented, obviously Oscar nominated, can come in and really just let their guard down and be completely silly and sort of game for anything, which it really seemed like he was, like you mentioned, the singing and just, his accents, just I think it's just really, the host obviously makes or breaks the show. And I think when, you have someone that is so talented and so revered in different ways and just willing to completely kind of let their guard down, leave that at the door and kind of just have fun with it is the best.
Yeah, and I think that we had a few of those this season with Rami Malek, we had Oscar Isaac, and now we had Benedict Cumberbatch, sort of more serious actors that have come in and really just, are able to have some fun. I think this is something really cool for their careers, that they can, just be really silly at times. And I think that was what's exciting. So I think that I would say that Benedict Cumberbatch for me was probably, it was an okay episode. And I think that, Rami Malek certainly was very high up. I think I enjoyed the Oscar Isaac one a lot. So I would say that this maybe wasn't to par with those, but I definitely see the similarities. I mean, to no fault of Benedict Cumberbatch's was my problems with this episode this week.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But
what were they? Can I ask?
Well, yeah, of course.
Or we'll get into them.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the sketches for sure. But yeah, honestly, it wasn't a bad episode of Saturday Night Live this week. I think I really felt like there was a pattern over maybe season 45 into season 46, where every single week I would watch SNL and I would say, wow, I really loved the episode, but it was the pre-tapes that I loved the more I thought about it. And I was like, why can't SNL do really great live sketches? And this was a problem. Even we talked about it a lot on the last season of our podcast during season 46. And they completely went away from that. And I started being like, wow, this is a really great season of the show. In season 47, I don't think we've had a problem with having great live sketches. In season 46, I had to specifically, when we were doing our best of for the season, figure out which were the live sketches that we can throw in there because we were limited. But yeah, this episode sort of felt like a little bit of a throwback to me in more ways than one, but this episode felt like a throwback because the pre-tapes were so strong. And the live sketches, to me personally, except for a couple, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, were sort of not the best. Yeah that's how I felt overall, and some retreads, this was fascinating to me about this episode, Emily, is if you look at the logistics of it all, we have a sketch that was a reprise of a sketch from the Regina King episode last season. So we had this Mother's Day gifts, right? Yes. Then we had I think it was the Chain Gang sketch, which was cut from Harry Styles' episode in 2019.
Wow.
And was brought back for this. So that to me is very interesting. Then we also had the reprise of the toilet sketch, which was the Benedict Cumberbatch from the first time. And then the fainting couch was cut from the Kieran Culkin episode, the episode that we podcasted about in the fall. So it sort of felt to me, if you're ever going to look at something like this and start to think to yourself, what was the structure of the episode? How was it designed? I never like to say SNL is running out of ideas, but it sort of felt like there was a lot of things this week that were brought up.
A lot of recycling. Yeah.
So that was kind of where I came from, the perspective on it. How about you? Anything else from the episode that really stood out to you that, affected your opinion on it overall?
Yeah. I didn't know all the specifics of those kind of recycled or retreads, but definitely could have done without the second iteration of the toilet pre-tape.
I liked it. I didn't. That's the one I did.
I liked it. I felt it's just you have better Cumberbatch there. Can you, I don't know. Can you do more of that? Just feel like that was just a waste of his. It was enjoyable, but I feel like that it could have been different. And did it really hit that hard the first time around that it was worth doing a second round of it? Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay, so basically what we are going to do on the Patron Feedback Show, for those who are checking this out for the first time and maybe are coming to us from the Saturday Night Vibes podcast, welcome on in. We're the SNL Network. So we go over our panelists' thoughts on the season, and Greg will join us and give his thoughts as well shortly. And then we're going to do some SNL social media. So we'll talk about things that the cast and crew have posted, and then we are going to answer your questions. We got a ton of questions this week on the podcast. So Emily and Greg will go through those and answer those throughout the show. All right, Emily, anything else you wanted to say about this episode before we dive into social media?
I don't think so. Let's dive into the media.
Okay, let's do it. All right. And we're going to talk about the specific sketches as we go through the social media. So we will bring that up right now. And let's start with the Blue Bunny sketch. So this was a post on Instagram from the company Blue_Bunny. Blue_Bunny says, we'll have to think about making a special batch of peanut brittle pie, a Cumberbatch. I always love the puns. So very good. Good on you, Blue Bunny. Hashtag SNL, hashtag we make fun at MVC SNL, hashtag Benedict Cumberbatch. So always really fun when the companies that are used in these sketches end up playing along with the bit. Emily, what do you think of this?
I liked it a lot. I liked the sort of riff on his Power of the Dog character, this tortured guy. I liked that we saw Melissa in the sketch. To be honest, I just always like when she shows up in the sketch. Yeah,
Can I
this
ask you something
wasn't.
about this?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, just thought of this. So we briefly talked about this on the roundtable. I wanted to get into it more. What were your thoughts on the fact that they put Melissa and Keenan as the straight people in this sketch between the two crazies? I thought that was such an odd choice to me.
It is, especially now that you say it, to have them both in there, especially when I feel like Melissa hasn't gotten enough screen time this year. To have her play a straight person in a sketch like this is maybe sort of a weird choice. And I think we saw Keenan kind of, give the, what he does best when he's like playing like one of the straight players in a sketch like this, is sort of like the like feigned like outrage or like confusion. I mean, he's always good for that. It wasn't my favorite sketch of the night, but I do think that Benedict and Heidi together did a really great job.
Yeah, I agree. And this was my favorite live sketch of the night for sure. And I just felt that Heidi, really my thesis on Heidi, it's hard to see, but if you look at the like deep statistics of the season, I mean, I just, like I said, I find it so fascinating that she has completely transformed herself as a cast member. For years, we always talked about her incredible Weekend Update characters. Now she's become the ultimate utility player. And then you're able to start to see her slowly bring funny characters into sketches. And I think just to see her on the screen playing off of Benedict Cumberbatch, using the weird voices, the incredible line writing, the fact that Heidi wrote this sketch herself, all of that is really just fascinating to me. So I have to applaud her. I think she's having a really, really great season.
For sure. She's been super strong this season.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, Chloe Feynman on Instagram said, at Heidi Gardner is absolutely genius in this incredible sketch. Heidi Gardner and Will Steven, who contributed to writing this as well. Lots of shout outs from also Faye Dunaway. That would be Bowen Yang. A perfect sketch, Heidi Gardner and Will Steven. So Heidi thanking both of them as well. Always fun to see the cast members supporting each other.
Love that.
Okay. Let's talk. So we talked about the toilet one briefly. This was a fun post from Sarah Squirm or Sarah Sherman, where she had her hair completely straightened. She looked super pretty, all done up for the toilet sketch. And she tweeted out at Sarah Squirm in full drag on SNL. This was pretty funny. Emily, what did you think?
I love hearing from Sarah. We have seen her, I feel like, a few times. We've gotten to see her a few times be her like super weird self, which is great. I feel like that's why they brought her to the show. She's very different for them. But we have seen her a couple times in this like very like modern, sort of costume and hair and makeup and stuff. But this was definitely, I think, the biggest stretch, to have that super long straight hair and just like the fully made up face. And I liked that in the sketch, like even though she looks very different than her normal thing, she's still like serving those kind of like crazy looks that she does.
For sure.
She's known for.
Hard to imagine that person that we're looking at the picture of saying this.
Hello.
Actually, that would be Chloe.
Yes,
but that was really funny post that we saw this week of Sarah on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, so one last thing. Sorry, a little bit wrong order, but one last thing about the Blue Bunny sketch. This was pretty funny. Somebody on Twitter tweeted, "Why did Benedict Cumberbatch and Heidi Gardner have more chemistry in this SNL sketch than most actors do in full-length movies these days?" And then we also had Heidi saying, "Let me nap with your hurt," written with Will Steven, dream line delivery. Benedict saying, "I can taste generations of women in it."
She's right. I can taste generations of women in it.
So wonderful. And I love that Heidi also on Instagram said, "Casting call. Please put me in the next Power of the Dog, please," which would be Benedict Cumberbatch's 2021 Western romance movie.
Yep.
Yeah. So great stuff there. Okay. Do you want to talk about this next sketch that we had up here? This is the
Charles Entertainment Cheese
sketch that we had from Bo and Yang. What were your thoughts on this one?
Probably my favorite live sketch of the night. We've just seen Bowen do so many great things this season and really just like come out as these like really over the top crazy performers. I think in his sketches, you know, we've seen him with Cecily Strong as sort of like in the cabaret kind of scene, and like, I mean, I think the audience is like, he has them like so under his thumb at this, like everyone, like you, when you see Bone, you know, he's going to like bring the energy. And I don't know if there's been a Chuck E. Cheese sketch before in the history. I don't know, but I was just like, what an amazing backdrop for a sketch. We were talking a little bit on our podcast this week about, a sketch in the Aziz Ansari episode a while back that was sort of like a little bit similar, was in like a sort of like children's like pizza themed restaurant, but like this place, I feel like those places are just like ripe for like comedy. So I really liked that they chose that. Loved that they had all of the animatronic, you know, band in the background, because that was terrifying and really gave me a sense of being there. But I just thought Benedict and Bowen together were just like such a force. The song was another thing Greg and I talked about, was like kind of a banger. Like, I mean, I've had that in my head quite a few times since Saturday. And yeah, this was my favorite of the night for sure.
Yeah, so this one for me I had a really interesting experience with, because when I first watched it, I did not care for it. And I think that I don't know, Emily, do you have a background in like Broadway or do you enjoy that stuff, like, or theater or anything like that?
I do enjoy it. I certainly don't have a background in it or, you know, have seen as much as I would like to have seen.
Right.
Not a regular.
Because like, yeah, I feel like my pop culture area that I lack in the most would be like the Broadway theater stuff.
Mhm.
So for me, whenever I see like, and it's been years of like Cecily Strong doing different Broadway style sketches on the show, I sort of became like a little tone deaf to them. And I feel like that sort of rubbed off on Bowen for me in the last like, you know, couple years. So when I saw this, I think I was like set to not care for it fully.
Yeah.
But I think in watching this again, I think the line delivery, I think the choice of the tone that they went with the music, which like, you know, was 80s synth, like, you know, that was really fun and different from what we'd seen on SNL. So it wasn't like full, like, you know, I guess like you would see on Broadway.
Sure.
So I think there was elements here that I ended up really enjoying a lot more. I also want to shout out like the kids that were like sitting in the background, the extras and stuff like that. Like they were so good, especially the ones that were sitting at the table with the two parents. Like I thought that was really, really great. So yeah, I think I ended up enjoying this one a lot more. Emily, do you want me to bring in your co-host's thoughts on this? I'll bring up Greg.
Yes, please.
Should we let him on? All right, let's bring up Greg.
Bring him in.
Yeah, Greg Croak is here. Greg, how are you?
Yes. Hello. Welcome to hell. How is everyone? How's everyone doing?
Hello.
Well, we're having a lot of fun here.
Excellent.
So, welcome back to the podcast, Greg. How are you? Did you enjoy this episode with Benedict Cumberbatch?
I did love this episode. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week, but I think Emily and I found him to be a very serviceable host, you know, which I think in some circles might come off as a backhanded compliment. And obviously we do tend to slant positive here, but yes, very, very serviceable, game for everything, executed highly on every level. So loved it.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad we had you both on an episode you really enjoyed. But the two of you, I mean, you're always good vibes. Are there any episodes you really don't enjoy? That's what I'd like to know.
You know, I don't love when, you know, the sort of non-performers are on. I know that it's something that I think I heard you talk about, like the Peyton Manning episode, John, as sort of like a sneaky good one. An all-timer. That's maybe one of the exceptions to the rule, and I would consider like Kim Kardashian to be a performer. So while she's not really in this, but yeah, certainly whenever a billionaire hosts, or, you know, I'm a lifelong Patriots fan, and, you know, I don't think, you know, Tom Brady needs to be operating on this particular medium, for example. So
interesting. Okay, I guess we'll explore that more down the road. But Greg, we are in the middle of doing our social media segment, and we were talking about the Chuck E. Cheese sketch. So let me get your thoughts on that. Did you enjoy that one?
Yes. This is so Bowen. This whole Bowen genre of sketch that they've put together this year, of just wherever kind of the cabaret, offshoots. I'm just really a sucker for. I'm generally a sucker for well performed singing sketches on the
That's
whole.
what we were just talking about, and John was like, "That's not really his thing." I was like, "That's Greg and I's thing, for sure."
Yeah.
Yes.
Gets us every time.
Bad songs I don't love, and poor performances, or like just kind of jokey performances. Like we don't need like fake raps anymore in 2022, things like that. But I mean, Bowen's just an elite, an elite ham at the very, very least. And I just thought this track was scorching.
For sure. And we do have a post from Bowen Yang on this one, where he put on Instagram, he put mouse emoji, a pizza emoji, game emoji, written with Brian Tucker and Billy Domino, photo credit Rosalind O'Connor and Will Heath, where he put up some behind the scenes photos of him and Benedict Cumberbatch. Billy Domino quote or restoried something from Chloe Fineman. Chloe Fineman says, favorite thing ever, at Faye Dunaway, at Brian Tucker, at Billy Domino. Billy Domino says, a goddess favors me. So very, very fun. Everybody seemed to enjoy this one. We didn't get to talk about this on the podcast yet. I was in New York City when this dropped last week. So, and there was a lot of talk about this from even non-fans of SNL, a lot of things that happened during the season 47 cast photo. So Emily and Greg, have you explored this at all?
I haven't gotten a chance to take a deep dive into it.
I have dug into this. Is this my question for the real heads? Is this a set, or is this they go to the subway?
So this was the set that was built for the John Mulaney episode during the Broadway, Mulaney Broadway thing. Yeah, exactly. Was it? Yeah, whatever it was that they did for the Mulaney episode. Yep. Yeah, that's what they built, and they ended up taking the photo thereafter. So there's a couple things that are really interesting about this photo. Number one, Pete Davidson, who was clearly photoshopped into the photo. So if you take a look and you haven't seen this photo yet, take a look. It's very, very funny. We also had a tweet from Sarah Sherman at Sarah Squirm saying, can you tell I'm holding 80s little hand here? So very cute. But yeah, it's always fun to get these photos dropped. Usually they come out a little bit earlier. I guess they were waiting to see how they're going to get Pete in it, but it was very fun to get the season 47 cast photo.
Frickin' Pete.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so we have some behind the scenes photos here that we put up from Chloe Fineman from her sketch, The Understudy. This was a pre-tape that we saw that I thought was fantastic. How about the two of you? Emily, what did you think of this?
I loved it. I mean, we've seen so many great things from Chloe. I love her impressions, obviously. And Greg and I are big fans of kind of like a carousel or like round table kind of where people are either going through, we either have multiple cast members doing impressions or one cast member, doing these impressions. I thought she was great. I mean, she nailed, I think, pretty much all of them. I love the cameo from Elizabeth Olsen. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not a huge Marvel fan, but certainly not Doctor Strange. Not really familiar with that at all. But I loved the cameo from her, and she just seemed like she was having so much genuine fun. I think a couple slides from now, there is a picture of her and Kate, and she said something like it was like an hour that they just like spent in that room filming them on those chairs, sort of like, waving their legs around. And it just seemed like they, there has to be a level of good humor with all of that stuff. And I think that's always fun to see cast members kind of reacting to each other.
For sure. This is a photo. These are photos of Chloe Fineman dressed up as the cast members, or as well as Elizabeth Olsen. The first one is Chloe as Kate McKinnon. Then we have Chloe with Elizabeth Olsen. We also have Chloe, a dead ringer for Melissa Villaseñor. Really incredible stuff there. And then the closest that we have is Chloe Fineman and Punky Johnson, of course. Greg, what did you think about this sketch?
What's kind of interesting, I mean, I was telling Emily, I think the impression that I wanted like an hour of was just her with Cecily. For some reason, that one really delighted me, even though it was just them kind of shrugging at each other. But that was the one that really hit home for me. I'm kind of a sucker for impression carousels anyway. So, you know, a skilled impersonator of any kind. I thought I read somewhere that all the cast members sort of have wigs of their own hair lying around too, that it's just sort of like, if they're in bald caps for a number of different things and they need to throw them in their regular hair, it's easier to throw a wig on than take everything off in style and stuff like that. So I wonder if this was just kind of sitting there, that they have perfect wigs for Chloe Fineman to use for all this. Not that they wouldn't be able to generate one anyway, but just kind of interesting that this idea has been kind of sitting there. I feel like, I mean, obviously there's better historians than I, but certainly not a lot of examples of sort of cast members impersonating each other, except maybe on talk shows and things like that.
For sure. And I think you are right about the wigs. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. Chloe Fineman posted on Instagram, huge shouts to all of these icons at NBC SNL who were game to do this. Mike DiCenzo, Skaterpunk69, that would be Jake Nordwin, and hashtag Ben Silva wrote this with me and made it so funny and delightful. Hashtag Chloe Feinberg. Always a dream to do this, to do a vid with the Queen, Adriana Robles, and Ryan McElraith. And thank you to Lizzie Olsen for hopping in to do this as well and killing it. Also, Kate footage was an hour long of delight, but the last slide sums it up, which is a picture of Chloe Fineman, or Chloe Feinberg, holding Kate McKinnon's head. Actually, I don't know which one is which. Can you guys know who's on the left, who's on the right here?
Impossible to tell.
Interchangeable. Look at this picture. Doesn't that just fill your heart with love? You know?
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Really
It does. Okay. Next up, we have this one from film unit producer Mike Diva. And Mike says, I did it. I directed a poo-poo pee-pee toilet sketch starring Benedict Cumberbatch, toilet emoji. It was so fun to have an excuse to shoot a bunch of crazy wide Dutch angles and try to capture that off-putting 90s commercial vibe. And I believe Oz Rodriguez was the first one who did this in 2016, and then it was passed off to Mike Diva. Greg, we got Emily's thoughts earlier on this sketch. Do you want to give us your thoughts on the toilet one? Not my favorite, but I kind of respect the commitment to bringing it back, you know, sort of kind of a nothing idea that's just, nice little like over the top poo poo pee pee joke. But nothing much to say other than kind of funny that it's kind of a poo poo pee pee joke. They get Sarah Squirm in it to kind of play it straight, which I thought was they were so like, well, we're going to do the toilet one, so let's get the gross out person in here and we'll just have her react. Not much here. I thought I was dying on the hill alone on Monday when I said that I would use this toilet. So Greg and Emily, please tell me that I'm not alone here.
Oh, I would use the toilet.
Thank you.
It's kind of surprising that it, like, as I was watching it, I'm like, that doesn't exist. It seems like it should exist in this day and age.
Times being what they are.
Yeah.
It just feels ideal.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll put that in the bucket of classic SNL commercials that would actually be of good use.
Yeah.
I want to show this. So if you are watching on YouTube, you will see a visual that I put up. And I was watching the show again for the second time. And there was just this angle that happened during the second Arcade Fire performance. I thought I would put this out on the Patreon show of how cool it was. It's an angle we don't normally get of the studio. But basically, you can see the cameraman basically went to the side of Win Butler as he was singing. And you could see the audience on the floor and the audience on the second floor watching the performances. And if you are watching on YouTube, you'll see that audience, the people on the floor right there are actually in front of home base where the monologue takes place and Weekend Update takes place. And the musical stage is over to the left if you're facing the stages from you. So, standing right in front of Win Butler is usually, a lot of family and friends and cast members. They come out to take videos of the sketches. But, for anyone who's never attended the show, I think this is such a fun perspective shot to see what it is really like to be there. When I was there at the show, the Chainsmokers performed, and it was just so cool to almost feel like they were performing for me. I mean, I was literally sitting like right on the floor and they were like 10 feet from me. And I think that experience for anybody who goes to the show is just so freaking cool. So good on SNL to, think of showing stuff. I don't know if this came from Arcade Fire's team or the SNL directing team, that they just decided to try something different, but I love that they put this angle in the show. So make sure to check that out if you haven't, if you're just listening on audio.
It reminds me a little bit of the Billie Eilish performance from earlier this year, where they sort of like, you don't really know where you are, and then they pulled the wall out from behind her, and it turns out you were looking right at the crowd the whole time, which was kind of the same thing. All of a sudden, you're right, you get so locked into the patterns of the frames they show you. So when they give you something unique like this, it can be startling.
It's very, very cool. And I think we also had something once where I think it was Adam Levine came in. He came in basically from the inside the studio, and he walked towards the stage, and you got a great angle from behind him as well. So anytime that they try something different, I think it's always really fun to get to see those angles on the show. Okay. Greg, you contributed to our slides for this week. So why don't you tell the listeners what they're going to look at here?
Well, as part of sort of the multimedia presentation here, I just felt like as we were looking back over the season, there was there's one particular sort of dark moment in the show, which was the Paul Rudd episode for every number of reasons. But I also thought that in that show was the best sketch of the year, which was the Home Goods sketch. And I just wanted to, as an example for all the listeners out there, show this image of Kate and Adie Bryant dressed up as the prospective grandmothers in the Home Goods sketch. And the very next day, I demanded to FaceTime my mother, and my aunt happened to have been there at the time, and just the uncanny resemblance, particularly with my mom and Kate McKinnon here, is just the true evidence of how much this rang true for me. And throughout the season, Emily and I have been talking about how the writers have been really kind of peeking through the windows at us. Obviously, a very slippery slope to compare women to other women, as I've learned in my young life here. But my mother loves this comparison. She was like, I'd take this. I love this sketch. I love this woman. I love that they've captured my person here. So I just wanted to share this with the SNL family, my actual family here.
Yeah, it's very, very cute. Very good job for Mother's Day to share some family photos. Emily, did you bring any family photos for us today?
I did not.
Okay.
I should have brought the video of my family handing me wooden sign after wooden sign, but I didn't bring it.
Yes, yes, that is very true. Did your family give you this?
We sucked your teeth dry, and now you look weird in a bathing suit.
Literally, that was one of the biggest laughs I've had this entire season, I think.
Yeah.
Was that line?
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day. Okay, and then Greg, you had one more thing. So we don't actually have the video of this, but we could tell the listeners where to check this out. So this is from Melissa Villaseñor's Instagram. And Greg, why did you want to make sure the listeners know about this video?
Yeah, so this was from a couple years ago. I immediately thought of this during the Chloe Feinberg impression of the of Melissa, that she posted this thing of Alex Moffat and Mikey Day and Cecily Strong in the other room just doing Kermit impressions and kind of passing them off as Melissa impressions. So if people have seen this before, they're all just kind of going like, "Oh, hey, Melissa. Oh, Melissa. Oh, you're Melissa, Melissa." So it's
pretty
clearly
delightful.
It tickles Melissa. So I was just kind of interested if others had seen this, and if you prefer the dead-on version, or if you just prefer Kermit the Frog substitute for your Melissa Villaseñor impression.
Yeah, so make sure to check that out. That is on Melissa V Comedy's Instagram. And oh boy, so many Melissas at work with Cecily and Mikey having some fun there as well as Alex Moffat. So really great time. So that will do it for our patron feedback slides and social media for today. Greg, Emily, do you guys want to get into some questions that we got this week from the listeners?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Let's start off with our first question that we have this week, and this is from the amazing Monette Murati. Monette says, are you for or against clapter in a sketch? Should it have been used in the cold open? So this is referring to the cold open that we got this week, known as Roe v. Wade or the Quick Child. So, Emily, are you for or against clapter in sketches?
I'm totally for it. I'm a complete sucker for it. I think it, especially, you know, on a show like SNL where there's just like the history of it, I love it. I don't think it's cheesy. I think it's like it's one of my favorite things. There's something so satisfying about it. I think for the audience, and I'm sure for the the performers actually performing the sketch. I think the risk is that some of the jokes that, you know, are really funny and deserve a big laugh sometimes don't get them, depending on, you know, the audience reaction. That kind of just like, I think you have run the risk of that dulling them a little bit. But I liked it in this cold open. And I think that having the audience react, you know, towards the end when Kate came out, some of like the big, the stuff that she was saying, just having like the cheers from the audience and stuff, I think that made it all the more powerful.
For sure. Greg, what about you?
An excellent question from Monette Stradamus, who just refuses to be wrong about any of these upcoming host predictions. I generally agree with everything Emily said. I really hate clapter in stand-up comedy. And I feel like there's more and more of that coming out, where some of my favorite performers have come out with sort of updated specials that are kind of all applause lines that saying things that, you know, are generally, you know, their audience members have come to see them already kind of agree with their worldview and sensibility. And then it kind of comes off as pandering. Now, I think some of those arguments could be addressed to NBC, to SNL, you know, considering the audience that they play to, but it's much bigger. And while it's not the entire spectrum of political beliefs in the country, I don't think every night, it's certainly a wider view than what sort of an individual performer has to say. And especially when they're talking about something that's a very current event, and it's something that's clearly very personal to the cast. I don't want the entire show to be these, but I think it totally makes sense for it to happen every so often.
Yeah, I'm generally for it. I would say I think Saturday Night Live is a live show. We want to hear and feel the audience. I think that when we were getting those COVID audiences where we had barely anybody in the studio, or frontline workers who certainly deserved more than enough to be there, but, you know, they were not necessarily like your typical SNL fans. And then, you know, we were not getting the type of applause or laughter that we would normally get from our audience. I mean, it made such a difference partway through season 46 last year when we heard that. And I think that for me, it's like, we hear all live performers, people who are, you know, performing in concerts and singers, and they talk about how much they appreciate having the audience. Even athletes talk about having, you know, crowds back and stuff like that. For me, like, I think the fun of it is having the crowd there. I think there's obviously certain exceptions. I think when you have like utter screaming fans the entire time, I think that could take, you know, you out of a sketch a little bit. But I think when a cast member tries to get the audience to clap or laugh or whatever, I think it's kind of fun. So I think that if I'm answering the question directly, I think it's a little bit case by case. But for me, general rule of thumb is try and involve the audience in the show, because I think that's how you make a better experience for everybody involved. Emily, do you have up the questions? Do you want to read the next one, or should I get it?
Yeah, no, I got them.
Cool.
From Ken George Jones, who I see in the chat right now. He says, I thought Benedict did a great job and was probably the most consistent episode this season, but between the number of retreads and bringing in a few previously cut sketches, I didn't feel like there was much of an effort put into the writing. Do you think there are certain hosts they are less likely or more likely to try harder for in the writing department, or is this down to the time of the season that he hosted, or him being busy promoting his film.
So what do you think?
I never considered this. It's a really good question. I can imagine when there's obviously like a host that's a stand-up comedian or someone who's just really well known for comedy, there's more of a either pressure, desire for the writers to like, get something like really great going. I kind of feel like it might have been just the timing in the season, with it sort of like us, dwindling down to the final episodes. Yeah, like we were saying, I don't know if are they retreads if they're brought back from a different episode and not actual like sketches that were like redone. Yeah, so I think it's a really good question from Ken. I
think it was stuff that was like touched up. I think that's okay. I would say it's an interesting thing to think about, and this is kind of the way I look at things, Ken, is like what was in this spot in previous seasons, and last year was the Elon Musk episode in this spot. So it was like, for anybody's thoughts about Elon as a host, I sort of felt like, similar there, you had a Chad, was the writing super strong? Probably not. Perhaps these first shows in May in general, there might be something to the fact that like, do the writers have this, have these creative juices flowing yet, or are they saving stuff potentially? I know we always ever hear from anybody who works at the show that they never save anything, but I think in the case, like this might be the 1 week of the year, the first week of May, that they start to save things for, the last couple weeks in May when some of the bigger names come in potentially. I don't know. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree generally that the final product of what they put out there could sort of lead to this assumption, although I do object somewhat to the idea that the writers phone in anything. In a given week, they're generating whatever it is, 50 plus sketch ideas between everyone in the room. So I'm sure that there's just throughout the week, the power of attrition, what they ended up picking ended up sort of resulting in a little bit more of sort of what could be interpreted as retreads and sort of some easy choices. But I don't know that necessarily means that they took the week off.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody, especially Ken, who is great in our chat every single week, definitely wouldn't be implying that they would take the week off. And I wouldn't either. I just think that there are probably some ideas that people have. I mean, I know that the cast probably knew at a certain point last week Selena Gomez was coming in next week. It's obviously a big name. It's exciting. Certainly they might feel that some ideas that they have would be better for a host like Selena versus Benedict Cumberbatch, who maybe would be, better fit for something a little bit more generic as opposed to specific. I don't know, but I don't think we have the answer, but I definitely notice a little bit of a trend here with these first episodes in May that I would like to continue to explore down the road.
Interesting.
Greg, do you want to take this next question from Ike?
Yes. Ike Moore, this episode was a lot better than Benedict's first outing. Can you think of hosts that got better more times they hosted? Dwayne Johnson comes to mind, as well as Adam Driver. I was trying to think of examples of hosts that got worse after doing it multiple times. It might be another way to think about it. Excuse me.
Yeah, diminishing returns, that could happen, obviously.
Yeah. I think almost anyone I was immediately thinking about almost always got better as things went on. There could be some arguments that recurring characters that belong to hosts maybe kind of wore out their welcome over time. I'm thinking kind of by the time Larry David hosted, I felt like his Bernie Sanders was a little kind of worn out by then, but that was his first time hosting. That's not really the same sort of the same kind of question. So yeah, I mean, I always think about like Justin Timberlake as being a guy that like came in a seasoned performer and got only better every single time. But that's a freezing cold take. So
yeah. Emily, do you have an example of anyone that you could think of that had let's say a mid first outing and then a really what people seem to really enjoy their second outing?
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of Anna Faris, who I wouldn't say her second time hosting would like really knocked it out of the park or anything, but I think it was definitely an improvement on her first. I agree with what Ike said about Adam Driver. I think he just got stronger and stronger. To kind of think about what Greg was saying, I love the Melissa McCarthy hosted episodes. I think that they're some of the best, but it's interesting to see how there are some really strong ones in each and then like sort of flounders, as it's definitely hasn't gotten, I don't think, progressively stronger. So that's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think there's also examples of people that have hosted like a million times. You know, I'm seeing like John Goodman in there. I'm thinking a little bit about like Alec Baldwin, where, you know, there's just the sheer amount of data, you know, the sheer amount of times he's done it. There's like some in the, you know, 75th percentile that are not as good as the ones that were at the beginning, and then some that have been better of late. So I think those ones are maybe other examples of people that have gotten worse and then gotten better again. So.
Yeah. You know, honestly, when Ike was talking about somebody who got better, I just, even though it was in the question, I just think The Rock is like the perfect example as somebody who just continued to get better over time. I think there are a lot more cases, though, of people who got worse as they came back. I think, you know, when you talk about, you know, some of the Hall of Famers, the top ones, you know, they like the people who've hosted a million times, they're not going to always, you know, kill it every single time they're out there. But for the most part, their episodes are like pretty good and you know what to expect from them. But there are a few. I think I saw Victor in the chat said Steve Carell, I think, is a good example of somebody who had a really fun first time hosting and then diminishing returns after that. I think I also saw, or I actually think like, you know, John Mulaney, who has a very high standard for his episodes, really just went like kind of got down and then really brought it back up this season. So it's always interesting to explore stuff like that, which one we prefer. I think in general, I would say the Benedict Cumberbatch episodes for me were like both decently good. Like, you know, they just like, there's nothing, you know, like, again, totally middle of the road. And I think we made the joke on the roundtable this week that like something that's completely average should be called a Benedict Cumberbatch from now on.
The Rock one is such a good one, though. Now I'm thinking about the first time The Rock hosts, and he's like still fully The Rock and not Dwayne Johnson yet.
Yes,
and he's
yeah.
like, he's up there doing all his hammed up WWE stuff. He's wearing like the big 90s era, you know, NBA oversized suit kind of thing before he sort of, I mean, that's just emblematic of his whole career, but that's probably one of the best examples of significant improvement.
For sure. And then you had like Vince McMahon on and Mick Foley and Triple H.
Yeah, exactly.
Very different times. Okay, I'm going to take this next one from our friend Curly Joe. Curly Joe says, the fainting sketch, and this is a sketch we haven't talked about yet, seemed to some viewers, including me, as too Carol Burnett. Was it or was it not? So interesting question here. Greg, do you want to take this one?
It was definitely very Carol Burnett. Whether something can be too Carol Burnett or not is not something I'm not sure I'd thought about. I think if the fact that to me that the show doesn't have a lot of that type of era of comedy sort of baked into its natural DNA make this feel novel to me. So definitely very Carol Burnett, but not overly done so.
Okay, Emily, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I think that they do this kind of over the top physical comedy enough, or sparingly enough, that it doesn't seem to me tired when they do it. It's definitely its own thing, and like Greg said, to see it super often, or to, you know, to have like more than one, I think, cast member who like, you know, really goes over the top like this would be a little bit too much. But I thought it was well placed.
Yeah, can I just say, and this is something I was talking about a little while ago, but if I had to pick somebody to have a Betty White style SNL episode, how about booking Carol Burnett to host SNL? I think that would be very fun.
Not a bad idea.
I don't know if that's ever been talked about, but start the Facebook campaign, because I think
has she ever hosted?
Fun. And she has never hosted. No, she's never appeared on SNL. So that would be, I think, a very fun thing that the show could do or consider down the road. I think would bring in a lot of ratings. But yeah, I mean, Curly Joe, you know, it sort of was Carol Burnett-y, but it was also had a lot of Cecily Strong style elements in it that, you know, I'm used to and seeing over the season. I think that the I think this is one of those sketches that the first time I saw it, I said, this probably played really well at the table. I feel like they are just cracking up, talking about all the different, things that Cecily is doing and knocking over. But I don't know if like it totally hit for me on the on the stage. And thank you. Ken said that during a 1984 SNL episode, Carol Burnett was in the Goodnights. Harry Anderson pulled her up on stage. So thank you for that pull. That's a good one. Okay, Emily, do you want to take this next question from Tran?
Yes. It's, do you think Chloe Fineman considers herself to be the next Kate McKinnon? I mean, I'm sure she hopes so, right? Like, I mean, who wouldn't want to be the next Kate McKinnon? I think their energy is very different. But I would say like Chloe is playing to win. I mean, she's come out so strongly and has just had this range to her characters that I think like, she's going to be, whether or not she considers herself, I think she is definitely set up to be the next Kate McKinnon. Not totally fitting that same mold, but I think that she's really like in it to win it. And we should not expect her to like go away or die down anytime soon.
Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that their performing styles are even all that similar beyond being sort of, blonde women. I think they're, one is an impressionist and one is kind of made herself known for this very unique, sort of off-putting, zany sensibility to her. Obviously Kate has her impressions too, just for the sheer amount of time she's been on. But I think very, very different approaches. I think, to Emily's point too, Chloe, this last year, really, I think it kind of exploded onto the scene, just a really strong sophomore year. I think that was her second year. And then I feel like has been a little bit more of a role player this year, a couple of her, just done Britney once or twice and, kind of just playing her part. So I think that's just only more evidence of she's willing to sort of take the lead or sit in the back where she's needed on the show.
Yeah, I think I go back to where Kate McKinnon started on the show back in the Sofia Vergara episode in 2012. She did a sketch where she played Penelope Cruz, and that was the first time we saw her, and it was just so funny and really just a great impression. And I think that people, Kate's played so many versions of like an old woman that I think sometimes people forget that she's also a really great impressionist. So I think that there is some correlation there. But I think if you're talking about, and to answer your question, Tran, I think you're talking about would Chloe Fineman consider herself to be the next Kate McKinnon? I think in terms of like longevity on the show, she would love to be there for that long. I just think that we need to see Chloe Fineman, who is an amazing impressionist, in more sketch roles in general, become more that utility player that we've been talking about with Heidi. I certainly expected a better season for Chloe than what we got in, but this is not the week to talk about Chloe Fineman not being great on the show because she just crushed it this episode. So I'm really impressed with her, and I would like to see what she can do in season 48. She's going to be a big storyline for me going into next season. Yeah.
Emily, did you already submit our formal request for the new statistic? We were hoping the SNL Network would start tracking.
I did not.
Which is what?
We were wondering the total percentage of characters are old women in Kate's repertoire. And wondering, we'll send that to your team of statisticians. I imagine there's thousands of them.
Yes. Mike Murray, if you're listening, please get on that for me. So we will find out for that. Greg, do you want to take this next question from Haley?
Yes. Haley McLaughlin. I noticed with the MCU hosts this season, there hasn't been much about their MCU roles other than mentioning what they are promoting. This episode, there was some with the understudy sketch, but Jonathan Majors didn't even mention Loki. When Jeremy Renner hosted, they did a whole Avengers sketch. Do you think that Marvel regulates what they can and can't do, or do the hosts or the writers make that decision?
All right, Greg, what do you think?
Good questions about sort of where the trademark sharing there is. My understanding is that it seems like they're generally pretty loose with it, given the past work with the Avengers stuff, or when Gal Gadot comes on and they can do some of the Wonder Woman stuff. So it is kind of interesting that that hasn't come up as much. And I wonder myself if there's sort of just such an oversaturation in the market that it's not necessarily the same calling card that it used to be. Although I don't know, I felt like when Oscar Isaac came out, he was at least feigning excitement for being in Moon Knight. So and there's even been some chatter around that he really took some convincing to take that role on, that he really wanted to do something self-contained and like, I got to see the whole script, and you're not signing me up for 15 years of Avengers movies kind of thing. So people that are deeper into the comic book world might understand more there, but that was my only kind of thought about that, is maybe it's not the same sort of like, I want to get to the top of the roof and tell the world that I'm finally in the Marvel universe, because it's maybe not the same as it used to be. But
Emily, what do you think?
That's a good point, Greg, with the oversaturation piece of it. I mean, I know, like, apart from Marvel, it's just like, you often hear or see hosts come out and, in their monologue say something like, well, Lauren wanted me to do this, or I got pitched all these sketches about, whatever their kind of trademark thing is. And they're like, but I said, no, I'm not doing that. Like, so, to Haley's question, is how much of the part do the hosts play in being like, no, I'm not here to do, especially if it's something that they're not, the movie isn't like happening right then, they're not, doing really, like, going really hard for promoting it. How much do they have a say in being like, no, that's sort of like tired to me, I don't want to be associated, like, I'm not doing that on SNL. So I don't know. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, I just find that, like, every week this season, we've always been like, oh, well, the host is from this, so are they going to do something from that? And I just don't think that these group of writers and are interested in doing that. I think that, especially considering we had a ton of first-time hosts, I think that a lot of those first-time hosts really want to get away from the things that they do outside of the SNL world and want to dive deep into new things. I think, like, a really interesting example of something that was the opposite was actually also during the Kieran Culkin episode, there was a Succession sketch that was cut, and we didn't get to see that. And that would have been the example of something like that this season. But, for whatever reason, I think it's a choice. It could be one of two things. It could be Benedict Cumberbatch coming in, zooming in on Monday night and just saying, hey guys, like, so excited to be back. I'm down for really anything, but not really that into doing Doctor Strange this week. And, the writers just take that a run, or maybe the writers just don't have a good take on it. SNL has done some Marvel stuff back in the original Avengers days. And I just don't think if they don't have a good take on it, I don't know that they're going to do it. So and for the record, I doubt that Marvel would have any problem with them doing anything related to impersonating any of their characters. So that is that. Okay, question from Victor Higgins, who is always in our chats and is an excellent contributor to our shows. Victor said, could you see SNL making Benedict Cumberbatch a 5-timer? So this is interesting because Emily and Greg, you are much higher on Benedict Cumberbatch than I was this week. I thought he was really good. Nothing bad to say, but just could he be a 5-timer? Emily, what do you think?
I don't see it. I mean, I think, like, in the long run, sure, they could bring him back 3 more times over the course of however many seasons, depending on what his career does, and he would, like we've been saying, like, serviceable and generally be okay. I really did enjoy him this past week, but I don't get a 5-timer feel, just like right off the bat.
Yeah, I don't know. Greg, what do you think?
Well, I feel like the 5-timer prediction would be it's got to be a combination of, are they good enough to host? I think at least Emily and I would say he meets at least the minimum qualifications of a good host. Yeah. And then the other piece is how relevant is he going to be, in the future? I don't know that there's any sort of sign, pending, whatever future scandal he's going to get himself wrapped up in, as many men of his ilk find themselves wrapped up in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine he's going to continue to be in Marvel movies and get leading roles and, produce his own shows and whatever the case might be. So I feel like certainly wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's different from, say, a John Mulaney, who certainly had things coming out, but it's, clear that Lauren and the writers and the audience and everybody loves him. So it's sort of like he's a A+ 100 out of 100 host. So let's keep bringing him back. So I could see it.
In another universe, I think that Benedict
Another
Cumberbatch,
multiverse.
yeah, in the multiverse, Benedict Cumberbatch is an SNL cast member. I think he's like, just a very good, solid, serviceable SNL cast member that could be, on the show for 5 to 8 years and do really well in some sketches. But I just don't know that I think that his best spot is, as a host, particularly. I think that, they trust him enough that they put him in the cold open, which was a very big deal. And that was exciting, which I didn't even get your thoughts on, by the way. Would love to do that. So, Emily, did you have any thoughts on the cold open?
I really did appreciate it. I mean, it was obviously super topical, and I liked that they didn't go with a political sketch to tackle that issue. For sure.
Cool.
Steven.
That's somebody walking in the background of Emily.
Yep.
Greg, what about you? How did you feel that they SNL did with the cold open this week?
Yeah, I was very refreshed by the just doing something different. I mean, I think everyone was ready for something to be really related to that topic. So glad to have something different.
Yeah. Okay. This next question comes in from Jeremy Boulard. Jeremy asked, is there another one-time host from season 42? So that would be the season that Benedict Cumberbatch hosted the first time, that you would like to see return? If so, who is it? We have Margot Robbie, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Emily Blunt, John Cena, Casey Affleck, Felicity Jones, Aziz Ansari, Octavia Spencer, and Chris Pine. Greg, anybody on that list stand out to you?
I mean, I think this is maybe a good jumping off point for something that Emily and I talk about a lot with the Margot Robbie episode in particular. I mean, a great performer, I thought that she was a perfectly good host and all that. But something we talk about a lot is sort of, considering that, hosts are oftentimes going to be these major Hollywood celebrities who are also the most attractive people on the planet. There's going to be a tendency towards writing things for them that are ostensibly about how hot they are, right? I mean, then the Margot Robbie episode was like that. It was one sketch after the other about, here's some dork trying to hit on her, or here's this kind of, she's this hot person in another context. And the Jennifer Lopez episode was kind of like that. And we talk about that a lot of like, it's certainly sitting there and one of the things you can do, but if you're going to make half the show about it, we're kind of degrading, the overall potential of that person. And in addition to continuing to perpetuate all these sort of body type things that we're wrestling with in the culture. So I don't know if there's any more to add to that, Emily, but I was the first thing I thought of when I saw Margot Robbie on there, because we talk about that a lot.
We do talk about that a lot. Sort of like to speak to it, I kind of like glossed over her name when I read this list because I was like, I don't want to see them do that again because I feel like that's sort of what they do. I think she's really talented and she can do more than that. But when I read this list of people and I'm thinking who I would like to see, I was like, Margot's episode was just so because there were a lot of those sketches that happened. So when I see this list, Lin-Manuel stuck out to me right away. Also John Cena.
Yeah. By the way, during Benedict Cumberbatch's first episode of SNL, there was literally a sketch called "Why Is Benedict Cumberbatch Hot?" So, to your points, Greg. But yes, Emily, you nailed it. I mean, the same thing for me. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda needs a redo. Not that his episode was bad, but had an all-time moment in it that I think will be played on Freezing Cold Takes forever. So I think that we could definitely have Lin-Manuel back on the show again. I think he's super talented. I see on Jimmy Fallon a lot. He's incredible, and would love to see him back on the show.
We were just talking about the Aziz Ansari episode this week too, as sort of like thinking about other Chuck E. Cheese type settings, and he does that. I want that pizza. That one was just, for some reason that sticks out from his episode.
Yeah, for sure. This next question is from Naomi Wyas, who is in our chat tonight. Naomi asks, so Pete was in New York City last weekend for the Met Gala, but seemingly missed the show out of leisure, just her speculation. But she believes that he didn't have anything to film that week. So her question is, how do you think that works salary-wise when cast members miss a show and not for medical matters or other projects? I guess the short version of this question would be, do you think Pete still gets paid even though he's not at the show? Naomi, I don't have a great answer for this. I think it is a very bizarre situation that is happening this week. I would have bet so much that Pete Davidson would have been back in the building for this beginning of this run. I would have been like, okay, he missed a lot of the season. He was going to be there for the beginning of this. He wasn't. I don't know if we're going to see him again this season. Maybe he's just going to ride off into the sunset, and what we saw is what we saw. But for me, is with regards to being paid, I assume that he's still contracted up, and whatever he worked out with Lorne and people at NBC Universal, I'm sure is all clear. And I don't think money is an issue for him nowadays. So I'm sure that everything is all square. But it's going to be very fascinating to do the post-mortem on Pete Davidson when he's done being a cast member, because this is one of the most weirdest, bizarre endings to an SNL career that I can remember. Emily, what do you think?
I feel like I don't want to I haven't wanted to talk about it too much because I don't want to cheapen SNL with this gossip and kind of this
sure.
But I am fascinated by this. I don't understand. I just wonder about it constantly. How much of a say he gets in controlling what maybe is said about him, or everybody he touching his life, Kim and Kanye and all of that. I just am really kind of fascinated by the is there tiptoeing? Is it just out in the open? The question here, where was he if he was in New York? What, just for the Met, what happened? I mean, it just really I think the postmortem, like you said, is going to be very interesting.
I mean, Greg, Pete's career on SNL is going to be fascinating. It's one of the most interesting SNL careers ever. I think, a guy coming on as himself, talking to us, getting us to let him know about his personal struggles, his family history, his dating life. We consistently hear about it. And then, things are, people are judging him as an SNL cast member. And then all of a sudden it's COVID and he comes out in season 46 and he has an amazing season 46. Yeah. And then Kim Kardashian hosts at the beginning of 47 and he is just disappeared. It's really fascinating, the ups and downs of Pete's SNL career.
Yes, fucking guy. I don't know.
How much does that media that relationship play into how much he's not been on? Is it obvious that plays into it? Is that why he hasn't been around? Is that not the reason? I don't know.
I don't think we know. I think we're gonna I think these are questions that if one day we ever are fortunate enough to ever talk to Pete, this is gonna be it's the question we all want to know is what are you doing?
What is going on?
Yeah. I'm gonna sound like a 90-year-old man here, but it's sort of do you not appreciate the cast you're in, the space you're in? You're on Saturday Night Live, dude. You're gonna be really just gonna skirt off into the shadows for seemingly no reason. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very very interesting thing that's happening. Okay, let's take this next question from Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian would like to know, while there have been signs of passing the torch this season between some of the vets and the newer players, particularly the featured ones, we still do not know who might bow down gracefully and leave, as the phasing out of some of the vets is getting clearer by each passing episode. If you would guess personally who's most likely to leave this season, whom would you choose? Thanks as always for the great work. Thanks, Blood Meridian. Greg, if you had to choose a couple people to leave this season, who do you think's going?
Well, in addition to Pete, it sort of feels like the writing's on the wall for Melissa. It seems like there's been all these grumblings of she and Lauren are kind of on the outs, in addition to the fact that she's just been more or less not on the show in a lot of the ways that fans of hers like me would like to see her on the show. So there was one. I thought we got Cecily's goodbye performance last year, and that didn't quite happen. So that was sort of the other one. And then, Kate, I think everyone's kind of wondering every year when she's gonna leave. I think there was a lot to last year being such a weird COVID year that, this is sort of just my interpretation of what people have been saying, is that would have been, it was a weird time to join the cast, and it would have been it felt like an incomplete time to have left the cast. So I think that was my interpretation for why Beck was the only sort of voluntary exit from the cast. I would spin that into a positive to say that I feel like that spells better prospects for the likes of Punky and Aristotle, and in particular, that it's a big cast and a little attrition from the top would only be to their benefit. But yeah, been worried about Punky in particular.
Sure. Emily, do you have any choices for who you think is departing us at the end of the season?
Definitely agree with Pete and Melissa. I mean, there's just been so much murmur about Melissa, some of it even, herself has put out there. I agree too with Greg that Cecily, I feel like, is always a risk, especially after last season when we kind of thought for sure that we had seen her finale and then it didn't happen. Yeah, those are my picks.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm probably going to hold until, I don't want to speculate too much. I think I'm going to hold for now. I don't really know. I all I say is like SNL, like, excuse me, SNL, don't take the fun away from us. Like you don't have to save everything until after the Emmy Awards. Like if somebody's leaving, you could tell us. I think that's kind of fun. So I would love to find out, hopefully over the next few weeks.
I will say there was like some rumor, kind of like there always is, about, oh, this is Keenan's last year, which is always swirling and whatever. I will say that we will riot if they try to like quietly after the last show be like, oh, and by the way, Keenan is leaving.
I can tell you he's not leaving. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I mean, I didn't feel like he was about to, but I'm just, if he does and they don't give us like, let him host the last episode he does, or we get a what up with that in his final one, or do like a big Kristen Wiig style send off. Like he doesn't have a choice. He doesn't get to, let us send thank you cards. Like we're doing a big retirement party for him. So just let you know, get your pitchforks ready if that ever happens.
Yeah, I could tell you without telling you officially, but I could tell you he's staying on the show.
Perfect.
Until next season. So
that's great.
I don't have to worry.
I wasn't worried. Yeah. I was just
saying.
Sorry, fair enough. I appreciate the point. Also, I just want to shout out Tim Phelan, who also sent in the same question. Is it time to speculate who might be leaving after the season? So shout out Tim. Thanks for sending in that question. Let's take this last question. Emily, do you want to read this one?
Yeah. From Casey Killingsworth, he says, so do Greg and Emily have any podcast plans for the summer? Any upcoming guests on Saturday Night Vibes planned? Asking for a friend. Because we did have Casey on, can't remember which month that was this season, but we did have Casey
December
on. We had
for the holiday sort of best of.
Yes, that's right. Best of holiday. Yeah, we had a great time with him. Would welcome you back anytime, Casey. We need more guests. That's something we're always talking about, Greg and I, trying to figure out like who we can pull in.
Greg and Emily, where's the invite?
We're certainly sick of hearing our own voices. Come on.
We don't have the money for John Schneider. I mean, we have a very strict budget. Yeah.
But in some other exciting news, as far as like podcast plans for the summer, I think that Greg and I are going to be pivoting pretty severely into sort of tossing back and forth this idea of a podcast that centers on, as Greg and I are parents, we do a lot of our kids and parenting in general comes up a lot in our podcast, just kind of like naturally. Think about doing a podcast on children's shows, sort of dissecting the absurdity there, and really just, I don't know, Greg, we don't really have like a pitch for it.
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is that we're trying to provide some guidance to other parents, because I think a lot of us will select shows the way we select shows for ourselves, which is like, oh, we'll scroll around and this show, whatever. This guy Blippy on YouTube, whatever. It seems like that's popular. Let's just click on that. The problem is if your child like loves it, you're going to have to watch it 60 million times. So what we're trying to do is like, don't just wander into the woods alone. Let's give you a little clarity here of like, if you wander into Bluey on Disney Plus, you're good to go for the 100 episodes of Bluey. If you go into Blippy, you got to be prepared for some like real YouTube, like complete hack nonsense for, whatever, 2 hours a day for the next 3 months. So we're just trying to be helpful out there.
And I think, we're very positive on our show, and I would love the chance to just like rant about some of the stuff I am forced to listen to multiple hours a day. So
Emily's very worried about the mother in Coco Melon, for example. She feels like someone needs to help that poor.
Okay, we'll save the takes for your show, because I don't want to spoil anything.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, well that is fantastic, and I look forward to making sure to send that to all of my friends as well who are new parents, stuff like that. So that is awesome. Okay, so Greg, Emily, the only thing that we didn't talk about today was just our expectations on what we're looking forward to this week with Selena Gomez coming in. So Emily, how do you feel about Selena Gomez coming in to host the show for the first time?
You know, I am so unfamiliar with Selena Gomez, like aside from her music. Like I never watched her on Disney. I missed that, and I'm really not familiar with her as a performer, like I said, at all outside of music. I like her music, but I don't really know what to expect this week. I think it'll be. I don't think she's going to bomb at all. I think she's going to be, you know, she's used to being in the limelight on stage, so I think it'll be serviceable at the worst, for using that word.
Yeah,
throwing it around there.
We have a segment on our show called Did You Know Who the Musical Guest Was? Which is just to illustrate that we generally...
you should have a new segment, Greg, on your show called Is the Musical Guest in Jail?
I like that one. Yeah. So that's, generally kind of how I feel. It's like I know that the kids listen to Selena Gomez. I do think, though, this season, there were 3 hosts in particular that I wasn't terribly familiar with, or that I wasn't really sure of. It was Kim Kardashian, Ariana DeBose, and Jonathan Majors were all the 3 that I was just like, I either don't know who this person is or I have no idea what to expect, and was delighted by all 3 of them. So if that's the trend of where we're going, then no reason but be positive.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so pumped. I just have to say, like, I'm really giddy about this. I think this is like, I think Selena is such a talented actress. And really, like, you know, I've been talking a little bit, especially on the Patreon feedback shows where I get to like really talk to the listeners directly instead of just hosting the show. You know, I've been talking about the SNL's, you know, kind of lack of ability sometimes to book traditional female actresses. And you know, Selena is a musician as well, but she is just such a great actress, and I'm so pumped to see what she's going to do. And you know, obviously has been in and around the show for many years, so I feel like she knows what she's doing. I think the cast is going to be excited about it. You know, I don't want to raise the expectations too high, but I just really feel like you know, this is it. SNL, like season 47 has been like a good season. It's been better than some of the ones we've had the last few years. Like, you have a big name host coming in. The ratings are going to be high. Like, put out your best stuff, because this week is the week to do it. So I'm very pumped for what we're going to see from Selena Gomez, and obviously music from Post Malone. Okay. Greg, Emily, so great to get to catch up with both of you. I always love hearing your thoughts, and it's just absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. Who wants to do plugs for your shows?
Greg's the plug guy.
I'm a plugman. Yes, at SNL_vibes on Twitter is where you can find us. It's Saturday Night Vibes, wherever you get your podcast. It's an all positive, downright pandering recap show that celebrates the current cast, so we don't have to wait 15 years to look back on them fondly. If you're completely shifting gears, but if you enjoy punk rock and live in the Pacific Northwest of North America, suggest that you come out and check out Kid Leather, the punk band that we play in May and June. So catch us out there and in all manner of content.
Okay, for sure. Emily, where can people find you on social media?
I am at Phenomenally. A little bit of a mouthful, but
I love it.
You'll figure it out. And I'm through SNL Vibes as well. You can find me there. Yes. We're there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then as for us on here at the SNL Network, we are back with Hollywood Dish tomorrow night. So I'm excited for that show to return. Nicole Rovine and Rebecca North will be back with guest Sammy K to talk about everything that is happening in and around the world to get you ready for the Selena Gomez episode. There's just like a lot of weird stuff happening in pop culture nowadays. So expect a very fun, weird show. Always great to hear from Sammy as well. We will be back on Saturday night for the Hot Take Show with Andrew Dick and Kalina Steckel. So expect some fiery hot takes for the Selena Gomez and Post Malone episode. And of course, our roundtable patron feedback shows next week. And we just announced this for our patrons today. I sent out an email blast to all of our patrons. But if you have ever wanted to join us on a patron feedback show and you are a patron, you can do so on our finale patron feedback show, where we will welcome in any patron who wants to join us, wants to call in for a quick segment to tell us their thoughts on the show and maybe answer a question or two. That'll be in 2 weeks' time, right after the season finale for that patron feedback show. So make sure to fill out that form as well to let me know that you'll be joining us on that show. Okay, you can find us at the SNL Network on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find me at John Schneider24. You make sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Chat, thanks for staying up late with us on this Wednesday night. We will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.
Go Bruins.
Good night.